So my name is Andrew Jack from the Financial Times. I oversee our FT Free Schools Access Programme, offering access to full FT content to schools around the world. And of course, politics is a key area that we cover both in the UK and internationally, and a really important subject for A-level and beyond. So it's been great now for several years to combine forces with the Political Studies Association and the Association of Citizenship Teaching, along with the UK Parliament, to do an annual essay competition. And thank all of you, therefore, for joining and for taking part. So over the next 20 minutes or so, we're going to hear from 2 or 3 great speakers, and then hand over to Michelle Doyle-Weidman from the Political Studies Association to announce the winners. Politics is always a very lively and exciting time. We couldn't have predicted when we set the precise date and time that it would be competing directly with the UK's new Prime Minister. So very lively moment going on at the moment in the House of Commons. And Lindsay Hoyle, the Speaker, unfortunately, therefore had to be called away to supervise that session. And therefore it's with great pleasure and thanks for standing in at the last minute, first of all, that I'm going to hand over in 1 second to one of the Deputy Speakers, Nigel Evans Mp, for a few introductory remarks. And I hope in part also, if you like, answering from his perspective the question that you all as students have been writing on so excellently. In other words, the UK Parliament doesn't look or sound like the rest of the country. Should this change? And if so, how? So now let me hand over with great pleasure to Nigel for his reflections on that.
Thank you very much, Andrew, and your team, and all the competitors. Apologies from Lindsay. He is in the chair at this moment in time, and you can only imagine how busy things have been over the last 48 hours with the new Prime Minister and the statement that she is now giving about the energy crisis. So Lindsay has asked me to step in, and I'm honoured to do so, and I think it's absolutely fantastic, and I hope that next year, we can have everybody in Parliament in person for the competition results. So I'd like to thank the FT and the Orwell Foundation for organising this fantastic competition, and the question is absolutely superb. That the Parliament, our Parliament, doesn't look or sound like the rest of the country, and should it change, and if so, how? So I just want to read what Lindsay would have said, so you're not getting too much of an alteration, although clearly my personal observations may be slightly different when we come to diversity, because we know that from the entries that we received, you would say that too many MPs come from private schools or similar backgrounds, higher social classes, too many men, all of the same colour, we're too old, heterosexual, clearly not in my case, and to a degree, of course, you do have a point. However, in defence of the Commons, I can tell you that for all its faults, we do have now a record of women members of Parliament. As of March 2022, there were 225 women in the Commons, which means for the first time ever, female representation is over 1/3. But we've got a lot more to do. And as you know, from Monday's announcement, we now have our 3rd female Prime Minister, and more than 50% of all Labour MPs are female. Following the 2019 election, 65 or 10% of members of the House of Commons were from an ethnic minority. But even that's not good enough, because if we were to follow the proper percentages of the country, there should be 93 members from ethnic minorities. So we do have some way to go. Fewer than 10 MPs have publicly disclosed that they are disabled. But I'm very proud to say that the Speaker does lead a House of Commons that has a record number of gay, bisexual and lesbian MPs. There are 60 plus LGBT plus MPs. And so I would say that we have the gayest member of Parliament in the world. In fact, when I went to Gay Pride in New York just a couple of years ago, they were the centre of World Pride. I had some T-shirts done that said, we have more openly gay MPs than any other parliament in the world. And we have to take some credit for that, because there are some countries around the world where it is still illegal to be gay. And so for us to be able to say we have the gayest parliament in the world, I think is fantastic. And me as a deputy speaker, elected as an openly gay MP, I think there again sends a message to some of these other parliaments around the world. But it has to be noted that by the time MPs arrive here, fresh from their election victory, there is nothing we can do to change the electorate that the people have chosen. That is the job for the political parties, whether they decide to operate all women shortlists or to seek out people from diverse communities, age ranges, or different social groups as candidates. Our role is to welcome them, whoever they may be. Having said that, we have looked many times at how we can achieve a better work-life balance for MPs in the House of Commons. The hours have become more family-friendly from when I started in 1992. In fact, we had many late-night sittings going right through the night at times. But different parties have different priorities, and I'm sure compressed hours in fewer days would be preferable, let's say, to the Scots, who have much further to travel when they get down here. While London-based MPs with families might prefer us to sit perhaps like between 10 and 4 so they can pop their youngsters off to school themselves. But unfortunately, abuse and threats against MPs, largely through social media, have put off a number of people from continuing to stand. Women and those from ethnic minorities are the worst affected. Let's not forget, it was hatred like this directed towards elected parliamentarians that resulted in the tragic loss of both Joe Cox and David Amos, who were both murdered. It is why we have introduced real-time media monitoring to look at the words used against MPs, including death threats and promises to reveal where we live. A new head of security has been brought in to improve intelligence on potential cyber threats to Parliament. And we are constantly improving security for MPs, not just in London, but in their constituency offices and even where they live. We want to be the best in the game, so we're able to provide leadership and help other parliaments experiencing the same levels of threat that we do too. This is an example of the things we're doing to remove the barriers preventing women and people who are younger or from more diverse backgrounds from entering Parliament. Personally, I think greater understanding comes when we are more diverse, and that should also apply to our staff, who are often the first members of the public see when they visit our Parliament or indeed our offices in the constituencies. Now, I'd like to see many more people from underrepresented communities taking senior positions. I'd like people to want to work in the House of Commons and to tell their peers what a great place it is. And we are leading by example here. Now, let's just look at the Speaker's office. The majority of staff are female, 18% of his colleagues are gay, and a number of staff have invisible disabilities. But ultimately, if you want to change Parliament, you yourselves need to be part of that process. So I'm proud to say that when the Speaker, when he was the youngest member of Chorley Council at the age of just 22, and he wanted to stand up for younger people. So the fact that when he left the council at the age of 39, he was still the youngest, just goes to show that change can take a long time. So in our view, people cannot start early enough if they want to be involved in democracy. This could be by joining a political party, which I did at the age of 17. I was a very young county councillor, so much so that when I got elected to the county council, at my first lunch, I went into the restaurant, and one of the waitresses came up to me and she said, "I'm terribly sorry, only councillors are allowed in this restaurant." And I had to point out to her, I was a councillor, and she laughed. So that just shows you, there are no glass ceilings here, and if there are any glass ceilings, we have to burst through them. So get involved, distribute leaflets, join political parties, get involved in groups, and take part in social media campaigns. Just get your voices heard. Who knows? Some of the people who, Andrew, have been involved in this competition could be future members of Parliament, and one of them may be even a future Prime Minister. So at the end of the day, there's only one way to find out, and that is to get elected. So I would like to thank everybody who's been involved in this competition, and especially the FT and the Orwell Foundation for involving yourselves in this, in organising it and getting young people activated enough to take part in the competition. I think it's great that the winner that you're about to announce is going to have their works printed, and that is a huge kudos to those who've got involved. And don't get disappointed if you don't win the competition. When I first got elected to Parliament, it was 1992. I stood in 1987 in Swansea West at a very young age, in my 20s, and I got the worst result for 119 years, which the Daily Mirror told me afterwards. Then in 1989, I stood in a by-election in Pontypridd. My party went in second position. We came third on that election. And then in 1991, I stood for a by-election in the Ribble Valley, the 13th safest Conservative seat in the country. Couldn't possibly lose that, could I? I did. But resilience is everything. I kept trying, and I got elected in 1992, and I've been the Member of Parliament here for over 30 years, and I'm currently Deputy Speaker of the House of Commons. My father was a grocer from Swansea, and so if I can do it, you can do it. Good luck.
So Nigel, thank you very much for that, for stepping in at short notice, for kind of very much living and being part of that message of diversity, and also for a kind of sobering reminder about the pressures, including from social media on MPs, but also the wider message of resilience and perseverance and the need for the coming generations to be active and engaged in the political process. So thanks very much for those opening remarks. And now you're going to hear in a few minutes from Michelle, the winners. But first, I'd like to turn to my colleague at the FT, Stephen Bush, one of our associate editors and political commentators, who very kindly was amongst our judges. And he's going to just give a few impressions of the quality and the style and the content of the range of submissions that he and his colleagues and fellow judges went through. Stephen, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and thank you so much to all of you for the quality of your entrance. As one of the other things I've done this year has been a judge on the Orwell Prize, and this was harder. The quality and breadth of the submissions, some used conversational style, some used humor, some used data, some were fiercely impassioned, some were dryly logical, but all of them did so with quality and flair. But I particularly wanted to talk about one of the things I particularly liked was several of them had the, several of them even decided to go, look, actually, I don't accept the premise of the question, which I think shows real bravery in this kind of prize. It's always very tempting to go with the grain of what you perceive the prize to be. Now, I think it does matter that politics is diverse for all of the reasons that Nigel has superbly just set out. And I think, one of the qualities of our winning entrants is they make those arguments very well. But one of the reasons why participation matters is that politics is at its best when different views are freely expressed, debated, discussed, and pitted against each other. And part of the brilliance of these entries is the lengths you've gone to prove your case, whether arguing for or against the question we've set you, using both historical breadth. One of the entries starts in the 1800s. Another of the entries references violence against women in Mexico. This was an astonishing body of work. It was a real pleasure and privilege to read. It was very difficult to decide a winner, but it only goes to show the importance of stepping up. And if you feel you have something to say, saying it. So thank you very much.
Stephen, thanks very much indeed for those kind remarks and your efforts in judging, and some great messages there, including about having the courage and the bravery to push back even against the premise of questions, as well as to provide strong supporting arguments and evidence. So now let me hand over to Michelle Doyle-Weidman from Political Studies Association, our key partner in this competition, to provide some reflections and to announce the winners. Michelle.
Thank you, Andrew. As Chief Executive of the Political Studies Association, I'm honoured to be announcing today's winners of the Student Blog Competition 2022. But firstly, a few thank yous. Thank you and well done to Andrew, because he won't get thanked at any other point today for his involvement and partnership over many years. And to Joan Fisher and Dr. James Weinberg from the PSA for running the competition, and to my fellow judges, Stephen Bush from the FT and Claire Tabridi from the Association of Citizenship Teaching. But my most important heartfelt thanks goes to all of you for taking part. And as Stephen has just set out, it was an absolute joy to read so many excellent evidence-based and well-argued opinion pieces. So thank you so much, and spread the word amongst your network to get involved next time round. I dearly hope that you continue to write and to lean into politics. So in response to our theme, as Andrew has mentioned at the top, your blogs are very timely and apt. As this week we've seen a new Prime Minister and her cabinet prompting a fresh debate on diversity and representation in Parliament and in government. So without further ado, I will talk about our winners, and I'll start with our two runners up. The opening line of our first runners up blog was, "It isn't subtle that the UK Parliament is not visually representative of the rest of the country." And so it got straight to the point of our theme. As a matter of importance to our democracy, they were clear that some degree of reform is necessary to address the lack of true representation. But in this well-balanced piece, they also acknowledged that our representatives in Parliament should be voted in on merit rather than diversity, and hence the challenges involved. I'm delighted to announce that our first runner-up is Rahul Mathur from University College School.
Thanks so much.
Well done, Rahul. Michelle.
Well done, and congratulations. Our second runners-up, well-written blog, was strong in using statistics to back up their central argument, and also gave the example of underrepresentation of the trans community in Parliament. The writer's call for action is to encourage open communication and the selection of ambassadors for underrepresented groups within Parliament. Our second runner-up is Scarlett Phillips.
Thank you so much.
Very well done, and congratulations, Scarlett. And so now for our winning blog. Our winner submitted a very well-framed blog with a good mix of data, analysis, and proposals for change. It demonstrated a well-considered use of statistics in analysing the current makeup of MPs in Parliament, contrasting this with the rest of the country, which obviously Nigel did speak about it too. The key answer to defined inequalities, argued in the blog, is to strengthen and adhere to voluntary political party quotas, such as those used in New Zealand and other parts of the world. The winner of the 2022 Student Blog Competition is Abim Teo from Haberdashers School, Boys School.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations and well done, Abim. So as stated at the top, Abim will see their blog published in the near future in both the FT and in the PSA's Political Insight magazine. So obviously as a PSA, we very much look forward to being able to work with our partners at the FT and ACT and with UK Parliament again to support even more young people having their voice heard in the future. The PSA is the largest community of those who teach and study politics in the UK. And as Nigel was kind of inspiring you to do, please do consider joining the PSA if you aren't already a member. And that will help make sure opportunities like this continue in the future. Thank you so much. I hand back to Andrew.
And just before Andrew says anything, Andrew, can I say to Abim, Rahul and Scarlett, many congratulations, and to everybody else who took part. Well done. Congratulations.
Thank you very much, Nigel, and thanks, Michelle, and also thank you to the PSA team, including Joan here online, who've done so much to ensure this competition is a success. And thanks to Stephen here, as well as our other judges for going through this over the last few months. But above all, as Nigel said, thanks and well done to all of you who took part, all with some great entries, as Stephen said, and really congratulations to Rahul, to Scarlett, and above all to Abim for your great essays. And we hope that you draw the lessons from Nigel and others and will go on to be active citizens, and even perhaps, who knows, directly engaged or ultimately sitting in the House of Commons. So thank you all today for joining. Best of luck in your studies and future lives, and keep in touch, including with the PSA and the FT. Thanks for joining us.